When you generate an invoice in SME, notice the Export to QB checkbox is checked. This is setting the invoice up in the queue to sync over to QuickBooks during the next sync. Once the invoice syncs to QuickBooks, you'll notice this checkbox is cleared. If this checkbox isn't checked by default when you create a new invoice, you can go to the Setup module, Company, Orders, and make sure Default Export Invoices is checked here. On this invoice that SME is sending over to QuickBooks, we have a couple items. There is an inventory item and a service item. The items on the invoice are in QuickBooks as well. In the item list in QuickBooks, we'll look up the inventory item first. In this inventory item, the income and cost accounts are set. Let's now look at the service item in the item list. In the service item, the accounts are set as well. I'm going to open SQLink and sync the invoices from SME over to QuickBooks. Once this sync is complete, I'm going to open up the invoice in QuickBooks. Here is the invoice that came from SME. Here on the invoice, we see the inventory item. The income is going to the account set on the inventory item. If you create a new inventory item in SME, you can set up the accounts on the Link Options tab. The inventory item will sync to QuickBooks with the accounts assigned. If you aren't keeping inventory items in QuickBooks, then you need to know what accounts are assigned to the inventory items. This item on the invoice is not in QuickBooks as an inventory item. When we sync the invoice over to QuickBooks, we will look at what accounts this item uses. Here is the invoice, and notice the account used is SMP item. SMP item is a placeholder item that tells QuickBooks which income account to assign the income to. I'm going to open the item list in QuickBooks and open the SMP item so we can see what accounts are set. When getting SME set up, you will want to go to the SMP item and set the accounts for your company. If your inventory item in SME is not an inventory item in QuickBooks, SMP item is the default used, and you can see that here in SQLink. If you do not keep track of inventory in QuickBooks, but you want to use various income accounts for inventory items, depending on what type of item it is, then you can create more than one placeholder and tell the inventory item in SME which placeholder to use. Notice in my item list, I have SMP item. I'll enter another inventory item called SMP item 2. And set the income account. I'll set another SMP item 3 and set the accounts. I'll let SME and QuickBooks sync. Now when we go to the Inventory module and open an inventory item, we can go to the Link Options tab and select SMP item 2 from the default overwrite field. To show you how the new SMP item 2 is used on an invoice, let's create another itemized invoice and put that inventory item on it. I'll click New, Itemized Invoice, select the billing company. On the Order Items tab, I'll select the inventory item we just edited. And save the invoice. I'll open SQLink and sync the invoices from SME over to QuickBooks. Here is the invoice in QuickBooks. Notice the account used on the inventory item is the default override item we assigned to the inventory item in SME.